bringing some serious truth and transparency to the $68 billion supplement industry.
The reality is that we still live in an industry that's driven by marketing hype, and it's a little chaotic because they were looking for acquisition targets. Okay, and many of those we did due diligence on didn't really have the science to support the claims. It was pretty pathetic. I want to give a tool to the consumer that they can have on their phone, a health tech app that they can actually put in their profile and then go find actually the science-based supplements.
Well, it's got to be the stuff that's being fed to us by Facebook and Instagram, right? Welcome to the CEO and the Salesman podcast. My name is Matthew. Today we're talking to Dr. Bill Clark. He's a scientist and entrepreneur who's bringing some serious truth and transparency to the $68 billion supplement industry. He's the founder of NutriSelect AI. It's an AI-powered platform helping people cut through the hype and make smart, science-backed decisions about their health. We're going to be talking about what's broken in the wellness world, how AI can fix it, and how Dr. Bill's journey has taken him through, his PhDs and helping other businesses scale. Like there's one of the companies he's been involved in, it grew, I think about $250 million in the first year. So he's got lots of experience. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So g'day, Dr. Bill. How are you going?
All right, man, Matthew. Thanks for having me, man. Love to be here.
An absolute pleasure. Hey, look, so rather than me talk about and just rabbit on, I'd love you to tell your story. What prompted you to think, you know what, this industry needs to change?
It's interesting because I never planned to go into this industry, first of all.
Right.
So, but isn't that how our journeys are, whatever. Truth
Often.
be told, actually, I had started out, where I did my graduate work at UC Santa Cruz and in the 90s. And I was actually going to be a marine biologist. That's kind of what I was geared towards. That's why I went there. But my professor who was teaching organic chemistry, he said, "No, you really should think about chemistry." And he was doing some cool stuff with marine natural products and expedition to the South Pacific. In fact, that's when I went to Australia, man. I did. We flew to Australia to Cairns and then up to Papua New Guinea, and I did a field expedition up there. So not far from your neck of the woods. And
Sure.
But anyway, and then I was doing my postdoc there, and I had a master's student I was supervising, and then her boyfriend, who was the senior vice president of research and development for this startup company, and this was like 97, I think, 97, and so he approached me and said, "Hey, we just signed this deal with Whitehall Robins, which is what was at the time called Whitehall Robins. Now it's Pfizer. No, actually, Centrum brand is now under Haleon, right?
Right.
So, and this is the year 98 was the year that Big Pharma got into botanicals and supplements. Prior to that, they didn't touch them. It was vitamins and minerals. So it's a historic landmark or milestone in the supplement industry. And so I didn't even take supplements. I took a multivitamin. I didn't know that much about botanicals, but the company I went to work for as director of R&D was heavy into the research. They were well funded, and that set the stage for me to jump into the supplement industry.
Got it. Okay. And so, so let's just dive into it. Because there seems to be a bit of misinformation, or like every time you switch on a podcast, it's not every time I sort of look on the internet and there's heaps of advertising out there saying that this is the next big thing. This is the next thing. I'm coming up to 50. So of course, I'm now being fed ads about being, have this particular compound or peptide is going to make, all the pain go away and repair all my ligaments and so. What's really, is it just profit that's driving these types of conversations, or is there something else?
Well, that's an astute observation, because the reality is, and I'm going to speak very transparently about my industry. I've been in almost 30 years, and the reality is I'm about the science. I always was. So when I first came into it, that's why I joined this company, and we moved forward with that, because we really raised the bar on testing and standards that didn't exist at the time. regulations were new with DSHEA, which is the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. It just passed in 94. I joined in 97. So really new. But there's good and bad. One, the good thing is the industry has really evolved and moved more and more towards the science piece of this. But the reality is that we still live in an industry that's driven by marketing hype, and it's a little chaotic. And part of that is just the framework of the regulatory framework, actually, of, that was passed way back 30 years ago. And it hasn't really evolved that much. I mean, there's been improvements, other things, whatever, but it's still a good system. The barrier to entry to get it was really geared towards business. The industry really pushed forward that legislation, but it's really geared towards people being able to get into this business. The barrier to entry is pretty low. That's good and bad, because then the bad side of that is it's not all the opportunists that have the ability to jump in and make wild claims and stuff like that can do that. Even Amazon really only got on board as the largest e-commerce retailer of supplements. They got criticized for years by the industry saying, hey, guys, you need to screen these products you're selling on your platform. And so they did. They implemented, requirements for companies to submit certificates of analysis for testing and et cetera, and they keep upping that. But Matthew, we're still not there, which is why I started NutriSelect.
Yeah, no, I get it. So I want to talk about NutriSelect because it's about AI and using AI. So how did you come across the idea that AI could help with that? Because, obviously we would do our own research, talk to our health practitioners, we would, make our own decisions. Well, some people would make their own decisions, or people would follow, whatever's on the latest trend.
Yeah.
So,
or social media influencer.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't say I haven't been a willing participant in that process, in which I've bought some various brain supplements, and they seem to work okay. Maybe the coffee was good that morning. I'm not too sure. So how does AI work into all of this?
Well, to be honest, NutriSelect's my ninth venture, and I debated whether or not I wanted to start another company. And this is over the 30 years, all of them in this industry. Most of the time, it was products I took to market. One of my companies was a contract research organization, so I was doing clinical research. And this was like 12, 13 years ago, and the industry really wasn't jumping on board. They were still keeping one foot in the marketing hype piece and not really wanting to do the science on their products. So I got out of that. I was too early to the market for that sort of thing. And so I said, I've always been a tech nerd. So starting in 2018, I was already evaluating emerging technologies to see how, my goal was to see how we could change the industry in terms of how we approach doing clinical research or validating supplements, because it's a different animal. People try to apply the pharma model to that, and it doesn't really work because it's a different kind of product. And so I started looking at distributed ledger-based technology. If you know what that is, it's the foundation for Bitcoin and everything.
So like blockchain. Okay, cool.
And people have taken that and tried to apply it to supply chain or whatever, but it wasn't ready yet. So I kind of put it in the back burner until a year and a half ago. And with all the advances of generative AI, then I asked myself, it's like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I contemplated myself and I said, what's the biggest problem I can solve in my industry? And of course it's obvious, but it came to me right away. And I said, well, Bill, for years, people have come up to you and asked you and said, hey, Dr. Bill, what do I take for this? That's always hard for me to answer because there's too many products, given that there's actually about 100,000 products, last estimate, on the U.S. market alone. Okay, wow. How do you even find the truly science-based products? And what is the number of products out there that actually spend the money on the research stuff?
It's got to be the stuff that's being fed to us by Facebook and Instagram, right?
Yeah, right. Sure.
Obviously.
It must be that. Yeah. Or
it must be that. That's a great way to make a decision.
or it's Cardassian telling us to buy this GLP-1 product, which now they're getting sued, class action lawsuit right now. The reality is that we still live in an industry, unfortunately, that still wants to still live in that marketing hype sort of thing. I know personally many companies I've known for years, and people who are colleagues of mine, that some of them are kind of holding me at arm's length because they don't want the industry to change. They don't want what I'm going to do for NutriSelect. So after I asked that question to the universe and I got the answer right away, and I said, okay, let's reactivate my technology play here. I started interviewing technology folks around the globe, seriously, all over, engineers, everything. I said, look, this is my vision. I want to give a tool to the consumer that they can have on their phone, a health tech app that they can actually put in their profile and then go find actually the science-based supplements, right? And that are matched to their profile and are going to have real-time health progress tracking and all that. I have this huge vision of what I want to create here. And I can talk till I'm blue in the face, trade shows, all that about my industry and say, we want to do the science, stuff like that. And everybody pats each other in the back, say, we're all about the science. But the reality is they don't actually execute. And then I could go to Washington, D.C. and talk to the FDA and FTC. They're resource challenged. Their focus, their mandate is about safety, which it should be. And
sure, that makes sense.
It makes sense, right? That is really their mandate. And I've taught regulatory.
So hang on. So just want to be really clear. Yeah. So safety, not efficacy.
No, not efficacy. That's a key
that's
point.
Interesting. That's that. I thought that. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So I talk about this all the time. There's 3 pillars in this industry. Okay, safety, label claim, and efficacy. So the first 2 were really kind of tackled 25 years ago, at least. When we did PharmaPrint, that was the company I worked for, when we did Centrum Verbals and launched that in the market, 98 was the year, all the big pharma got in botanicals, like I said. So, but this birthed all of the third-party testing laboratories that exist today. Some are not around anymore, but there's still some of those guys that have been around. And I spoke about this at conferences and stuff like that. But then we also and then I was approached by NSF when they started their third-party certification program, which focused on label claim and safety, right? So safety meaning, okay, the industry, we did have regulations. There's a misperception that we don't have we're not regulated. That's absolutely not true. We have to debunk it even today. But the reality is, and a lot of companies do a lot of self-regulation themselves. So they don't actually, some companies don't even actually test their product or whatever, make sure it meets label claim or safety. We've come a long ways, but there's still companies that don't really do that. And but the third pillar, efficacy, we haven't tackled yet. And that's what NutriSelect addressed. Because it's one thing to say, okay, this has 100 milligrams of this on the label, and I know it's going to be safe because it's NSF certified, but is it actually going to work for me, right? So how do you know that? And we talk about personalized nutrition in the industry. That's a term that's been coined for some years now. But the reality is there's no true personalization. When you start digging in and pull back the layers of that, it's not there. And, there's one more thing I want to add here, Matthew. So in my term, just before I went into NutriSelect, I was working for almost 4 years with Sanofi, big biopharmaceutical company. I was their subject matter expert for supplements. Now, and I also worked with their M&A group. So we were evaluating multi-million-dollar brands in the U.S. market, supplement brands, because they were looking for acquisition targets. Okay,
got it.
And many of those we did due diligence on didn't really have the science to support the claims. It was pretty pathetic. And we're talking known brands that people know. See, most consumers wouldn't know anything about this because this is all behind the scenes, business evaluation, stuff like that. We did close on it. We did close on acquiring Cunol in September 23. We closed that. It was $1.3 billion acquisition. Okay. And
and you
had some patented technology.
Sorry, my internet just cut out there. So you were part of the group that tested that product when this is a good one.
I was the lead subject matter expert on the science team. Fantastic. For that. So, and so I've seen behind the curtain for the brands. And I know it from my experience of almost 30 years as well. And the reality is I want to fix that. So like I said, I'm not going to get my colleagues, not all of them, some of them are partners with NutriSelect right now, to change their way of doing business. But I'm not going to get FDA or FTC to change their way, because that's not their mandate for efficacy. They don't even do that with drugs. So how do we get there? We put the power back in the hands of the consumer, Matthew. So I give them the tool to do that. And here's the beauty of leveraging generative AI. It's something that people should understand. There's a lot of misperception about AI in general as well. So it's only as good as your data sets. So a lot of things that are.
So how much information does a person need to put in about themselves? Obviously, when it comes to personalized health and obviously lifestyle and habits and all that type of stuff, right?
Yeah. So there's a starting point, of course, a foundation for that. There's two things here. So there's one what the user is going to do in terms of putting their information in there, and then they find the supplements, or they're searching for a product on stress or whatever, and they get some recommendations. Now, our proprietary platform, Precision Supplement Intelligence Platform, and our N-Score rating system, which I filed the provisional patent on in June, is what's going to evaluate based on science, not by brand or marketing or anything like that. It's a complex algorithm that goes through and does the calculation, returns an N-score of, at a gold tier level, silver or bronze. And this is what the consumer is going to see. And they're going to say, okay, I want this gold tier product. It's got that rating. And it'll be a report that'll tell why we gave it that rating and where the science was. Consumers no longer are going to have to go search on Google or even GPT, because it's just scraping the internet. So there's bad information out there as well as good information. So how do you know which is good or not? You don't.
And it hallucinates and comes up with a whole bunch of stuff. So anything can happen.
Yeah. And so there's no way to still weed through all that stuff. You'd have to be an expert like myself. And even then you have to scrutinize it. But I happen to know even the brands that I've seen that sounds good, looks good, when we actually got their data package and looked at their science, they didn't have the science. So the reality is I want to change the industry up to make it better. So imagine what's going to happen. There's a few things here. So actually, let me go back to the data piece. So there's one part where the user is going to have their interface, right? And that's going to evolve and grow with them over time by what they're using, their inputs, how it's tracking their health progress, all that. But the other piece of this is on the companies who I am partnering with, who are all about the science, ingredient companies or product brands, will have their actual data sets incorporated in the back end in addition to our standard data sets that's going to grow and evolve over time. So imagine, let's take ashwagandha, for example, right? There's thousands of products on the market with ashwagandha. How do you know which one is actually a good one? You've heard it's good. It's been in the mainstream media for stress, that kind of stuff. But how do you know which one is actually going to work for you? That's where, again, NutriSelect comes in for that. So we're going to have several funnels of information coming in that's going to prove over time and evolve. This is the beauty of generative AI, and it will learn and be trained from that information and be able at some point to be able to make predictions on innovation, research, product recommendations for that user they didn't even think of, right? So it's a really powerful tool that we're developing that's going to change the way consumers buy supplements. And then by default, it's going to change the industry that I'm in. So I don't have to go pound the door, beat the bushes with all the product brands and the ingredient companies there and say, hey, you guys need to change what you're doing. The consumers are going to do it for me. Okay, so don't blame me. The consumers are going to do it.
That's right, because the way that I would assume that most consumers would make a purchasing decision of ashwagandha or whatever product it is, it would be the mental heuristic or the shortcut would be go with find a known brand. And so what it sounds to me like you're presenting is the ability to scan the entire market and maybe find the more effective, less well-known product, which of course is going to democratize or level the playing field across the industry.
It absolutely levels the playing field. And we just launched our science accelerator programs for both product brands and ingredient companies just recently. And I'll be in Las Vegas next week for Supply Side Global. This is our biggest trade show with suppliers and manufacturers and such. We've got a lot of meetings lined up there. And if you think traditionally in our industry, the ingredient companies invested in the research, not the product brands. And it's still that way today. There's few product brands that really do research on their product as a whole, but that's changing. There's some great CROs out there that are really advancing how to do that. And guess what? There are partners. We just announced yesterday our fourth CRO to come on board our consortium. I'm building a consortium of like-minded companies who will work together with us to support the ingredient companies and product brands. So imagine you're the consumer with your app. Let's take ashwagandha as the example, okay? And you want to find a product in stress. Well, then there's a bunch of products with stress here, and then you see a bunch of gold tier ones. But then the ones that are going to rise to the top are the ones that may have a branded in ashwagandha ingredient, and probably the most well-known is KSM 66. And I happen to know them very well. They have over 50, 70 clinical studies, something like that on their ingredient. They're vertically integrated. I've actually been to India, visited their farms and manufacturing, and so they control the quality. So that's a gold tier ingredient. So when the consumer sees it, they're going to say, oh no, this is a gold tier ingredient in this product. And then the overall product's that's going to improve the overall product rating for that. But whatever additionally that product brand does in terms of research is going to even elevate it further. So ingredient companies, up until now, this will start really kicking in next year. Up until now, they had no direct visibility with consumers other than the product label that says a branded ingredient. But when consumer sees that, oh, it's branded, it's just marketing. How do they know what that means, right?
We don't.
You don't have any idea. But now when on the app, they're going to see this and it's going to do the report and say, oh, this contains KSM 66, a gold tier certified ingredient by NutriSelect. Boom. Okay.
Fantastic.
It gives another avenue for ingredient companies. Even I'm telling you, I've heard this from 60-year-old companies in our industry just recently. They still struggle selling their ingredients to product brands because some product brands are looking for some cheap ingredient and making the same claims, but they don't want to spend a little bit more money to get the ingredient that actually has this research to support it. And so it's a struggle for those ingredient companies to differentiate themselves even today. Well, NutriSelect solves that problem with them through our accelerator program. So we're going to bring out a bunch of strategic partners, ingredient companies that'll partner with us, big names, and we're going to leverage that because we're going to help educate the consumer about that. This is a new layer of visibility for the science that these guys have been doing for years that now the consumers will actually see. Imagine that.
Dr. Bill, that's super exciting. That really makes sense. And it seems to really be, for the moment. We're cutting through, we've gone through this sort of cycle of making wild claims, and now we're sort of coming out the other side where you can actually verify those and build the next step into that personalized healthcare. Right. And as of course, we've talked about longevity. People want to live longer, but actually people start talking about, not lifespan, but health span.
Health span.
And so
exactly.
that's the real sort of mind shift that people want to take. I don't want the last 20 years to be miserable in a home. I want my last 20 years to be, look like a TV advert. So look,
exactly.
So just sort of transitioning to the business side. So you've built many businesses before, and we'll talk about those if it's appropriate at the time. But what's been the toughest thing for you building this one?
I think, wow, that's a good question. Well, I'm raising capital right now, so I can tell you the climate for raising capital today right now is pretty tough. And it's a bit chilly out there. It's nuclear winter, man. So, and that's others who are experts in this. I'm also advisor and a member of startups.com. And we all talk about this among the community leaders that, it's like nuclear winter right now trying to raise capital. Now, the guys that are raising capital are in the AI sector. And I've heard this from investment groups all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
That people made their money in fintech or crypto or real estate, whatever. They want to get into that, sort of looking for those opportunities. I just got contacted by another company yesterday. So So the toughest thing for me was trying to go at that because the climate for fundraising had changed I'd raised capital before and it had been a few years for previous ventures. And so it wasn't the same, friends and family and angel, right? I've never raised in VC space. Right now, I'm still the same thing. I'm targeting HNIs and angels, that sort of thing. And we just, before I get to that, how did I get there? How did I get the commitment for our first investment? And we've got other people lined up now that will probably close on our pre-seed round next month. The reality was, and also being pre-revenue, we don't have an app quite in the market yet, but we've done tons of development. So we've got a lot of business relationships. I've been approached by 2 companies when we signed an LOI where they want to license our API, right? So they see the value of what we're bringing here. So these kind of things got tremendous traction. And so fortunately, having the expertise in the supplement space and then also having the technology piece here as well, that is interest to people because they see how it solves a real problem. If you look at it, US alone, there's 188 million daily supplement users. That's a huge number, right? That's a huge number
and a huge market.
Yeah. And I just want 1% of that, Matthew. So, which is pretty substantial. And in fact, I won't even see the reality that probably going to get bought before then and I'll exit. But that's the truth of it. But that's okay. I want to get the foundation for this out there to build something that's really valuable to consumers. It's going to change the way they buy. It's going to change that. So for me, the toughest part was the fundraising initially here, I'd say. Building the business and building relationships, I've always been very good at that. So I got people on board. I got people onto that because I'm really passionate about what I'm doing and I know my industry and so on. And everyone can see that what we need to do. So, but doing that and taking that approach, you have to think about how to pivot to what's going to work to get you the traction. Now, people say traction, they immediately think revenue, right? Or product and market or service, whatever, right? Sense, yeah. Doesn't have to be, okay? It can be it's a combination of several things to get traction that shows that you're moving and have momentum going in the right direction. Yes, we developed a prototype last year. We have screenshots for that. We're showing with the app and stuff like that. We've been under development with the MVP because we've been trying to get the capital raise so we can finish that, which looks like we're on track to do that now, and we'll be able to launch beta in Q1, Q2 marketplace version. But look for ways to get traction in your business, whatever makes sense. Partnerships, things that you can partner with, leverage that and build on that momentum. And it was that momentum that in the month of July here in August, I was getting contacted daily by investment groups from all over the world, daily. And all the investment that's coming into the company isn't from any cold outreach that I did. Okay, so
how did they hear about you?
I did press releases. I did thought pieces or thought articles. I had podcasts, all these different things to leverage all that. Any way you can leverage traction that you're getting and create momentum is going to get interest. And so I get the same thing. Or, I got interviewed. I got contacted with in my industry, journal to interview me about NutriSelect. And this was early on, and she's kind of following the process. I had early calls with VCs, like 3 of them, that said, okay, this is too early for this, but we're really interested. So when it comes to seed round funding next year, I'm already setting the stage for that, where we're going to have no trouble raising that capital that's going to help us scale in a huge way. But I guess I'd say that's probably the toughest thing. To me, the app is a no-brainer, and what it's going to accomplish is a no-brainer because I know the industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and people say, well, I shouldn't think just about capital, and all that. Well, actually, that's all I need is a little capital, and I'm going to change the industry. It's going to transform it because those companies that aren't doing the science today, that are sitting on the fence, well, they're either going to have to jump in and do it, or they're out of business because the consumers will not buy their product anymore.
Got it. And so, look, you're in an industry with incredible amounts of money. I think we said $68 billion industry.
Just US,
involved in this industry. Yeah, just US. And so, what keeps you grounded? I know that you're also an author. So you've got the commercial animal of you. So, there's another part of you, a spiritual or a sort of a, So, talk about your other adventures.
Sure, love to do that. I have been on this kind of. I'm a unique individual, not just this technical scientist guy and also this great business background and experience, but I've also been on the spiritual journey for decades now, and literally most of my life, where I teach meditation and stuff. I've been giving. I've probably given over 80 talks over the last few years. I'd say over the last 10 years,
Wow.
12 years, something like that. And different venues, that sort of thing. And of course, that's evolved now into a podcast. I have 2 podcasts I produce today. One is called the Bioactive Nexus, geared towards the supplement industry. We deep dive the science. I have my co-host, Dr. Gene Bruno, does that with me. And then I have my other one, Beyond Limits, where spirit meets science. And that's really my stories of my journey and stuff like that. And so I did just publish my first book. Here it is, Divine Whispers, and Poems of Love and Spirit. So it's a compilation of poems that I wrote over a 15-year period, and
Right.
different parts of my life.
We'll put a link below to all of that stuff, and also the podcast. Make sure people who want to follow those little rabbit holes, those little threads along the way, we'll make sure that people can see those.
Yeah. And you'll go to drbillclark.life. That's my website. And you can find your way to the books there. I've got 4. You'll see 4 listed there. And this is the first one to publish. But I've been writing for years. Started journaling, and then I started writing, and I contemplated publishing. But then I got, end of last year, beginning of this year, I got invited to do a TEDx talk. So that's upcoming. Then as I'm building my podcast with Beyond Limits since last year, I've had a lot of inquiries say, hey, have you thought about writing a business book? So guess what? My second book, which is coming hopefully before the end of the year, is based on a synthesis of all my talks I've given over the years. Think of it, I don't have a working title yet, but think Beyond Limits, where spirit meets science, conscious leadership. So it's going to be transformative. It's going to be a unique way of thinking about leadership. Sure, there's some books out there on conscious leadership, but not with my background or journey and my stories around where spirit meets science. This scientist who had a spiritual awakening, a really profound awakening, and led me on this path to explore that. And to me, it's just, science and spirit are just the same thing, but 2 different languages. Right? At the end of the day, that comes together as one. And that's what I've been doing in this genre for a number of years now. But yeah, so cool. That keeps me grounded. It keeps me focused on, I always talk about this in my industry at the Holy Trinity. I said, people say, hey, Dr. Bill, what do I take for this? And I say, well, first of all, there's no miracle pill. So you got to eat, right? Yeah. Although there would be plenty of marketing out there that would make you think that, but no.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I want to ask you about a bunch of stuff I've seen.
Yeah, no. So there's no miracle pill, right? So you got to eat right. You need to exercise, and you need to develop a spiritual practice. You need that balance. You need that yin and yang. You need all of that together. And they're not separate. People have separated these 2 genres and areas. What mystics have known for centuries, we're going to apply that to and talk about this in my book and the science that supports that. So,
well, the mind is an incredible tool, and there's stories. I'm from Australia, obviously living in America now, but from Australia, and we had stories of the Aboriginal people, and they would point the bone, which was put a curse on somebody, and the people they would tell stories of that person just up and dying because of their bodily believed in it, or they believed in it. Their body made that a reality. So those types of things happen. I could imagine happen quite often. People get themselves into a downward or an upward spiral. So it depends on how your mindset is and how you're connected there.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I talk about this. Everything is energy, right? And your thoughts are energy. They're creative. Yeah. So be mindful of your thoughts, because whatever you dwell on or think about, that's what you're going to create or manifest in your life. And if you look at the movie The Secret, 2006 or whatever, and all that, the book, that was that's remedial from what I'm talking about. But but it got people to get interested. It's like, oh yeah, I can create this in my life, and that kind of thing. But it's so much more than that. That's why I'm excited about the new book that's coming, because it's going to take it to a whole nother level.
Can you give us any sneak peek? Because there's lots of leaders who listen to this podcast, and
Sure.
and I'm trying to all continually work on me being a better leader of my team. And so, what are there some cornerstones or key tenets that you might want to touch upon in that sort of leadership piece?
Sure. So let's. I'll use one of my recent podcast examples: resilience, right? And so, how do we build resilience as leaders? As we're managing teams, companies, whatever. And I've managed many teams over the years. But I think my proving ground for resilience really happened some years ago when I lost everything and I found myself homeless living in a tent. Because when you lose everything, in fact, that's a title for one of my talks, $11 living in a tent to, health tech entrepreneur today. So there's a journey there and layers to that. But, do you have to have that happen in your life to build resilience? No, but I'll teach all those tools from my own experiences, my own near-death experiences. All these different things will layer into my stories of how you as an individual can do that as well. So resilient is one thing because it's a powerful subject. And we talk about faith and truth and how we integrate these principles into leadership in a way that's transparent, that engages people, and not create a hierarchy of, where, you got the boss and you got the employees and I do what I tell you. Well, that's not really great leadership. And yes, there are successful companies that have created empires that way. But the reality is that isn't how this is not the future. Let's call it that. What I'm proposing is a new way to think about leadership, and again, taking it on the level. And it's authentic because it's based on my own experiences.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I really like that. So just sort of circling back to NutriSelect, I'd really like to sort of wrap up there. So if you could talk to the consumers that are out there, what's a single truth that you would like to have them understand about their health, and what would that truth be? Is there one?
Well, you could answer that question in many ways, I think. But I'm with NutriSelect. I'm bringing to the consumers a way for them to truly proactively take charge of their health, because consumers are generally looking for ways to do that, but they're confused. There's too much chaos, there's too much noise, and they really don't. I mean, once people understand the value of NutriSelect, and once we get it out there, it's going to be like a revelation, because people are going to say, wow, I can do this myself now, and I can trust it because it's actually looking at the science. So that term of personalized nutrition goes away. It's old school. Okay. We're talking precision supplement intelligence. In fact, I'll probably come up with another word here to describe what we're doing. True personalization or real personalization. I don't know, because people know what personalization is, but we have something at a whole nother level that's going to truly give the person who's using this the ability to take control of their health in a very proactive way.
I love that. So what do you see, if you were to think about the next 5 to 10 years, what role do you think AI plays in that? Obviously, you've made some bets yourself, but broadly speaking, in the health space, how does AI play into that?
Well, if I was at the Health USA trade show this week in Las Vegas, the last couple of days, everything's about AI, and for clinicians, for any company involved in the whole multi-trillion-dollar wellness industry. All those industries. Every day I get a newsletter and see new things that people are doing to leveraging this technology. They're going to advance healthcare, and I'm only doing one small piece of that. And my vision is actually next year, hopefully speaking from the stage at that, and showing people what we have with NutriSelect, and that's the plan. So I think that's exciting. keep in mind that AI is just a tool, and it's only as good as the data set. So, some AI engineer, there are people that could go create something that on the surface it looks good, leveraging GPT or something like that. But we call those guys GPT wrappers. Does it have any sustainability, any depth to it, or any value? Not really. And those are going to all go away. They're flash in the pan. Okay. And I like to give this analogy, Matthew. So I ballroom dancer for years, trained, did some competitions and stuff like that. And everybody knows Dancing with the Stars from watching that. Us as dancers who really trained and did all that, we laugh when we see that, because when they show the cameras on these people dancing, they show it all up top and it all looks great, but their footwork sucks. Okay, so they aren't really doing the steps right. It's all flash and trash, we call it. Well, that's what it is right now for the AI industry. It's flash and trash. There's a lot of flash and trash out there. Okay. And also, I would also say companies want to leverage AI in some way, but don't know how to do that. And there are only a few key partners out there, I'd say, of ours that I know of that are really helping people with their enterprise systems or whatever. Every boardroom, executives are sitting around there talking about, okay, how do we use AI? And they just think they just go do a project just to do it. But the reality is you need to have a mission of how you're going to accomplish that, how you're going to really transition that. And there's a fear that AI is going to replace jobs. Yes and no. It's going to create new jobs, okay? Because you still have to have the human piece to this. Same thing with NutriSelect. I have my science advisory board and science team, and that's going to continue to grow. We're always going to have our finger on that and testing that to make sure the recommendations from NutriSelect's app are valuable, robust, and evolve and learn and go in the right direction here. We have to train it. An engineer that can write code for an app would not know how to do that because they don't have the years of experience that we do on the science side. They don't know what they don't know.
I love that. So I love how you're weaving together the science, the AI, the sort of hardcore, business stuff, but also the personalized, the spirituality, to create a complete solution for some people. So look, Dr. Bill, I really appreciated you having on the show today. I think it's fascinating, a little bit of a look behind the curtain on the on how I would just expect that efficacy would be an important factor when it comes to these types of decisions when it comes to healthcare, but that seems to be the forgotten one. Looking forward to seeing you in the next couple of years. People can see you in Vegas. Is that correct? You're going to be there in a couple of months?
Yep.
Did you say?
I'll be there next week for supply side. Yeah, next week for supply side global. That's the 27th through the 30th, and then of course again my second book coming out on this conscious leadership beyond limits where spirit meets science. Stay tuned for that. Follow on my website drbillclark.life. That'll keep you updated on the news. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I accept pretty much everybody on LinkedIn. I want everybody to hear about what I'm doing, not only just NutriSelect, but on this journey with my books and stuff like that, because it's valuable to people. I have people comment from all over the world about the podcast and stuff. Follow my podcast, Beyond Limits. You can find that on my website. And thanks for having me, Matthew.
Thanks so much for being on. All of those links will be on in the show notes underneath the links here on YouTube. Great. And also on Spotify. Thanks so much for coming on today. I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.
All right. Bye-bye.